It's August in West London. I'm on a dawn raid. I'm getting a chance to see the war on drugs in action. Hello. I'm here with the Metropolitan Police Force, about to kick some doors in. All right, everyone. Hello. Wow. You've got to be aware that, you know, I'm a little bit on edge in this situation. Typically, when confronted with this, I've got my hands behind me.
Right, good morning, everybody. Operation Concordia is on today. The bottom line is we've identified 5 addresses that's linked to local drug supply. We're here to make London a safer place to live in. This is in line with the Commissioner's Total War on Crime.
Nice to know I've got sat next to a fella who goes in by the back door. You've already had truncheon on my leg already. 15 years ago, I was on the other side of that door, metaphorically, not literally. I was in possession of drugs and guilty. I'm clean now, not as a result of prison or the criminal justice system, but because of abstinence-based recovery. That's a serious bit of kit. The war on drugs is our government's slogan, ideology and policy for dealing with drug addicts. $1 billion is spent on treating drug addicts, $4 billion on criminalising them. With 1,500 drug deaths a year, 2 years ago I took my views to Parliament.
We need to start regarding addiction in all its forms as a health issue as opposed to a judicial and criminal issue.
When that Home Affairs Select Committee reported that British drug laws failed, that the war on drugs is lost and that there's a now or never moment to reform our drug laws, David Cameron didn't agree.
We have a policy that actually is working in Britain. Drug use is coming down. I think we should stick at that.
Obviously, I disagree with David Cameron. The war on drugs has to end. I believe the only way to solve this problem is to listen to the addicts themselves and end criminalisation. Three days before the Notting Hill Carnival, a comparable festival takes place of police raids all over London. This one gives the Metropolitan Police a couple of problems. Firstly, they tackle a door that is more than fit for the purpose of keeping them out. And second, there is no one in the property guilty of any crime.
Just hold here.
Hey, that's it.
You're not going to take him into custody then, because he's not the suspect?
He's not the suspect, no. He would appear to be the father of a relation. Understandably naturally upset. Horrible things like that.
So who's in there at the moment? Just that geezer?
He's just saying Dad and his grandson.
Ideally, you want to find that there's gear stashed in that house.
Absolutely.
It seemed like a good idea to begin this documentary with the people that most vehemently oppose my views and enforce them rigorously. When I got arrested for the first time, I was like 19. I was around my mate John's house, and it was this kind of deal: front door, back door.
What, you were in the house when police were coming in?
I had about a quarter of an ounce sort of personal on me, and like it was proper, like sort of like all geared up and everything. And my mate John's dad went, "Fucking hell, it's only Russell." But then got nicked by the Met a week later, also for possession, in Soho, and it was in the back of a van like we was just in.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, obviously sort of being on this side of it,
You get a different side of things and how we perform.
Normal people are getting nicked and normal people are doing the nicking. You don't set the laws, you carry out instructions. I sort of feel like in a similar way, people that are dealing drugs are dealing with a different kind of law, the law of this is how you survive. Because the first raid didn't go to plan, no drugs were found, no one was arrested then or since. The police took us to a second location, which they informed me was a crack house. But I now know is actually just a house with poor people in it taking crack.
As you can see, the syringes there and other bits and pieces.
You all right? What?
Was?
Yeah, it's not a nice way to start the day.
No.
I tell you what was mad is that I've not been anywhere like that since I was a drug addict. So like sort of going in there and like that smell as soon as you go in, and then the desperation and the hopelessness. And in the end, it just makes you feel a real sense of despair. Do you ever feel that it's pointless?
Do you ever feel it's pointless? No, I don't. No, I don't. Because the default for me is we're being positive. A, we're being positive to the local community, but B, we're trying to get these people, we're trying to break the cycle. And if we don't do that, who's going to pick these people up?
For me, the police pursuit of drug dealers complicates effective treatment for addicts. I'll tell you what I reckon, Charlie. I'm thinking this is a health problem, not a crime problem. Just because they look like they're all buckled up and emaciated and, you know, a criminal, the attitude of a criminal is there's some power in that, right? If you're a sort of a person that's making dollar from your criminality. But that's just, I think,
the
people...
victims. The victims.
The ideal situation is no one takes drugs, especially people that, can't handle it. That ain't an option, people just are. So for me then, it's like, well, how do you organise it so that the people who are going to take drugs no matter what are handled in the best possible way? And there, I think there's room for improvement.
It could well be, Russell. Could well be.
Additionally, the policy being enforced here troubles the neighbours facing the house with poor people in it that take crack. It's 8 o'clock in the morning in this quiet residential street, and it's not the first time this flat has been raided.
They move people in here when they come out of prison. They raid them and then take them away. They get another suspended sentence. They bring them back again. It's just as sad for us. It happens to be opposite us. Yeah. But if they moved it away, I suppose it'd just turn up somewhere else.
It's going to be somewhere.
They've got to put them somewhere, haven't they?
It's a tough one, Del.
It is. And I say, I don't know the answer. You don't know the answer. And the trouble is, no one seems to know the answer. It just moves it around.
Only one of the 3 people in the house has been arrested. No drugs are found, and 27-year-old Samantha hasn't been done for drug possession or dealing, but for an outstanding theft warrant. These outstanding warrants, how come they're theft related, are they? So why did that happen?
Because of drug use. Using on top of my methadone.
It's nice to see that someone else is giving them a bit of compassion. We try to, but they see the uniform before they see the person.
I know, this is it. This is why it's the law that's important, the law.
Yeah.
The law.
Underneath this, I am one lovely girl.
I can imagine.
Not in that way. Get in the car.
You set me up. That's what I do for a living.
You cheeky sausage. Get away with you.
I follow Samantha, not in a weird way, back to the police station where she's being held before her court appearance. Specialist drug workers have been called, but I want to hear her story directly.
Do you remember why you first started using?
I was 12 when I moved here. So yeah, the first people that I met were users. So at that age I thought it was normal.
How many times have you been arrested?
A lot. I've been to prison a few times. I get out of prison, nowhere to live, so then I have to find somewhere to stay, which is normally smokers, because they're the only people that are willing to put you up. And then they want paid rent in drugs, so yeah.
It's really hopeless, isn't it? Hopeless scenario.
But it's an ongoing cycle for me. In prison, back out to nothing. So you just back.
You must feel tired, mate.
Yeah. Fed up. Yeah.
Don't worry. I know our circumstances are really, really different. I'm a person now that's got money and I don't use drugs and all that. The feeling that you have now, I understand that feeling. I understand that feeling. I understand that feeling. Oh, it's a drag, isn't it? Yeah. What about all the money what got spent on like all of the raid and all that and all of the business today, and then the real problem is housing and treatment. That's why my focus, Casey, is like...
I agree, but I'm employed to do one bit. No matter as being the minion at the bottom of the pile, I can say whatever I want to say, but it's not going to change anything. It's got to be hierarchy. I've got to start looking at why we keep doing this, and it's the same old people, so they've got to find their way of cutting the cycle and stopping it. We wouldn't want to see any family and friends in her situation. There needs to be that stepping stone to help you, and speaking to people like Sam and say, look, what do you actually need when you come out of places where you said you've been in prison? And say, look, right, this is what I need. If you're not going to give it to me, I'll be seeing you again next year, realistically.
Give us a cuddle then. I'll see you again soon, Samantha.
In that one borough, there were a total of 5 drug raids that day. No drugs were found in 4 of them, and there were 2 arrests. Samantha and a young lad for possession of cannabis with intent to supply. One person who agrees that the war on drugs is completely unhelpful is the woman who runs Kids Company. I meet Camilla today surrounded by kids at a summer play camp the organisation runs. But it's not these kids I'm here to learn about, but the ones that turn up at her street centres in London, Liverpool and Bristol.
We have 82% of our children arrive addicted to substances at our street level centres.
The children?
Yeah. 82%.
80% of the children?
90% of the children and young people were introduced to substances by their immediate carers and sort of people around them.
Camilla knows life is difficult enough for kids brought up by parents taking drugs, but the drugs being illegal just adds to the stress and tension the kids feel.
A lot of them are traumatised by everything that goes with illicit substance taking. So the drug dealers that burst in want their debts paid. The children often see firearms, the threats, so it's not just the substance taking that is the problem, it's the whole lifestyle that goes with it that terrifies the kids.
Seeing how highly emotional the children are when they arrive, Camilla has commissioned research with this neuroscientist bloke to test the impact all the stress has on the children's behaviour.
So the studies show that their amygdala, a kind of a key part of the brain involved in threat detection, is overactive. Really what you're seeing is that these kids are adapting,
right?
But they're adapting in ways which can increase vulnerability to things like addiction and to things like mental health problems. So many people, as you know, start taking drugs to self-medicate because they've got negative emotions, they've got hyperarousal, and that's what these kids experience.
That's why I did it.
And drugs are one effective way to kind of manage the pain and manage that arousal.
So what these children first need is at times of distress to be able to turn to someone to soothe them and calm them. And if they can't find the soother or the person who's going to help them solve problems, then the next best thing is to become oblivious to the problem. And drugs then do that for a lot of kids.
It's interesting that there seems to be at least a theoretical relationship between conditions of deprivation and poverty, sensitivity and hypervigilance, and drug use. So if you criminalise that, it's like criminalising poverty by proxy, isn't it?
Well, that's certainly one argument. I think that the problem about criminalisation is that it fails to look at why people are in this position in the first place. So why does somebody get to a point where they have to use drugs?
You can't keep blaming the individual and say this individual is irresponsible, they're a drug addict or they're a criminal. If we have large numbers of vulnerable individuals, we are as a society responsible.
Watch where you stand as well.
Yeah, I will. Bloody hell. God damn, man, it's brutal.
Philippe's a drug worker in Birmingham who wants me to see how criminalisation of users has driven them to taking their drugs in a dirty, unsafe, visually cliched place just a few hundred yards from the city centre.
People are going to inject heroin, but unfortunately they've got nowhere safe to inject.
Oh, what, so people are using here?
So absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
so
man, this
mind
is
yourself.
Dark shit.
I can't believe this is like in England, Birmingham, second city, and this is where people are having to...
Yeah, there's lots of needles.
Yeah, and people have slept here, as you can see.
Oh, man, it's fucking medieval.
This isn't the consequences of addiction, this is the consequences of criminalisation.
Yeah, sure.
But the addicts Philippe tries to help in Birmingham know that being viewed as criminals makes their lives even more dangerous.
I nearly died twice and he saved my life, so I was just getting to the point where I couldn't get myself, and police come and I had 3 needles of a pin and stuck it in one of my artery.
Oh, fucking hell,
And
mate.
so 15 people we know haven't been that lucky.
The thing I can't get past is it's like when you're using in conditions like that, you're like an animal. You're being treated like an animal.
Right.
Not having any rights and not having any respect and not having any, I don't know...
Dignity.
Dignity. Where are we? Burn. Burn, baby, burn.
One country, almost 30 years ago, decided to take a different approach. Oddly, it's Switzerland, a country I think of as being super conservative. But here in the capital, Bern, they set up a drug consumption room where addicts can legally and safely get a fix, which in some respects is a step forward.
You take also?
Not now. Before, yes. Now, no.
1,200 addicts are currently regulars at this place, using the smoking room and injecting rooms. Clean needles and utensils are all free. But Bubi Refner, who runs the centre, knows that drugs in Switzerland remain illegal.
Absolutely illegal.
They're illegal?
Absolutely. There are 2 policemen on the other side.
What do you mean? They're policemen?
Yeah. When you're outside, the police comes. When you're inside, police don't come.
Oh, right. So you
It's
won't
like
get
it's only like
arrested if you use in this facility?
Exactly. We got a pragmatic way of our drug policy. We say better when they use drugs, better they use it at a place where it's clean and good, with good syringes, not with the police chasing them. Our idea is to bring back the needles, the used needles.
Has that affected disease in Bern?
10 years ago, we had 98% of the people here were hepatitis.
Now?
Now it's about 60, even too much, huh?
Yeah.
So it does look like this place keeps addicts healthier. And as if to prove the point, Bubi introduces me to Claude, a teacher who's been taking drugs for 40 years.
So, I mean, it's good that this is here,
It keeps young, isn't it?
It's kept you youthful, Claude. There's no doubt about that. Isn't it? I mean, this is a good facility, but the problem is, for me, I was taking drugs for pain because I was miserable.
Yeah, me too. We all do. There's always a story of pain behind.
Is it possible, Claude, that if you were able to process the pain, that the drugs would not be necessary?
Yeah, I think the therapy should be always looking why you take it and not we stop now. You know?
This is heroin smokers?
Yeah, I feel you, baby. That's my thing. Oh, there she goes. Where do you buy your drugs? How do you buy? You buy the drugs here. How much for a bag?
20 grand.
For this for one burn?
Yeah.
Still, now, I have 11 years, still, I see this.
Yeah, it makes Is that not a problem for you?
A little bit. Good luck.
Thank you.
So why would you want to stop if you're surrounded by drugs every day in a place like this? When I meet former Health Minister for Switzerland, Thomas Zeltner, I ask him about the efficacy of this facility.
Thomas, what a pleasure to meet you, you handsome devil. Look, it's all very good, isn't it, down there, but, it just breaks your heart.
We said, nobody on this planet knows what to do with these people. They have been in and out of abstinence programs, they have been in and out in methadone. Why not try something? And very modestly and very scientifically try it. People survive in these programs.
More people are not dying of overdoses.
Yeah, they are able to go back to work.
It seems very innovative in one respect,
Yeah.
that there's a place where people can come and use drugs. But this doesn't feel like the manifestation of a psychological change where people in Switzerland generally accept here and in their hearts
Drug addiction is not a crime, drug addiction is an illness. That a move like this is not the manifestation of compassion, but the beginnings of ghettoisation. Drug addicts!
No, this centre, it's absolutely important that this centre is in the middle of the town, not in a ghetto. It has to be in the middle, that people see what's going on, because it's important that people know what we do.
What's happening to this guy out the window here? It looks like he's getting shook down. Do you get the idea that he's staying on his phone while he's getting searched? He's so relaxed.
Yes, I'm just being arrested right now. Yes, officer, one moment. Okay, happy Mother's Day.
Once drug addicts have access to facilities like this that are well-funded, well-staffed, well-situated, the objective must be, from that perspective, that you want people to get off drugs. You want people clean.
We try to get them out of this, but it seems hard. You just need to be very humble about all of these things and say, let's try. It seems to work.
As a recovering addict, I question whether easy access to drugs and a safe place to use them is ultimately helpful. Have you ever been clean?
Yeah, of course, many times. Many times. I'm actually quite happy, yeah.
A little bit high, add a little dose.
Yeah. But it could be worse, you know, it could be better, it could be worse. I say, all in all, I can consider myself as being very lucky.
All that is a well-run crack house. They're sick, fucked people. This is like a modest step to providing some support. It's nothing. It's nothing compared to what needs to change, because what needs to change is spiritual and emotional perspective of drug addiction, and that, I don't feel like that's changed here. Whatever flaws there are in these incremental measures made in Bern, the charges levelled against their own government are much more severe. It doesn't treat the real problem. There aren't drug consumption rooms in Britain, but supplying a legal drug to Britain's heroin addicts is a main plank of our government's policy. Every day, 320,000 addicts get a legal fix of methadone. The policy is called harm reduction, but this policy fails to bring addicts into recovery or to address the core issues behind it. A point I try to make when journalists question me about methadone.
I mean, there are, tens of thousands, well over 40,000 people on government treatment programmes who've been on methadone for 4 years or more. What would your message be to ministers when they look at those kind of figures on their desks?
Well, I don't think that anyone that's on methadone, as far as I'm concerned, hasn't been given the opportunity to get into recovery. Of course, methadone, Subutex and other substances can be used to ameliorate the horror of the active addiction to illegal substances, but only as part of a process leading towards abstinence.
A lot of addicts will say, well, look, if I didn't have that, actually I wouldn't be in treatment at all.
When you're talking about, as you've just mentioned, people for over 4 years, people anecdotally 10, 12, 15 years, obviously there's no solution. There's just the decision to life people off, get them out of the way, park them on methadone.
And is that what you think that the government are really doing?
I suppose so. It's not a very popular cause, is it? Drug addicts, a bit annoying, flaky-looking folk. Who wants to be coughing up money for them? In the first documentary we made about addiction, I came across Karen, a woman who'd been on methadone for 15 years, ever higher doses, but still topped up every day with heroin and cocaine. As a result, she'd been in and out of prison for years too.
Yeah, I don't know why I haven't done. I can't.
Because you're a drug addict and it's really hard. When I met Karen, she was a candidate for the boneyard, and I've assumed she'd be dead within 6 months. Fortunately, she agreed to go into rehab.
Yeah, I've been told that you're coming into treatment.
Yeah, that is the plan.
I remember thinking, you're in a treatment centre now. We've got you out of that environment. Don't fuck it up. And I could see that she was gonna. And it made me so angry. Do you remember me shouting at you?
Frequently down the phone when I was in treatment.
I don't think I've ever got that angry with a person that I've not been in a relationship with. As is common with the disease of addiction, it took several attempts for Karen to embrace the principles of abstinence-based recovery.
The relapse that happened after the second time was, I think the word is horrific.
Why? What happened?
I just felt worse than I'd ever felt before because I knew I could be clean. I knew I didn't have to use, but I was mentally and physically addicted again by the time I decided, oh, that was a bad idea. And I was just beaten and broken.
Now you are clean.
When I got clean this time, I just kept a hold of that memory of how bad it was. 2 of my friends within the last 8 weeks had relapsed and committed suicide. Wow. And one of them had like 2 years clean.
Listening to Karen helps us to realise how hard the journey to recovery is, but shows too that addiction can be beaten, people can be saved, but like me, they can never forget what they're up against.
No matter how long I get in recovery, it's not a given that I won't use again. I don't want to use at the moment, but I wouldn't mind a drink.
It's knowing people like Karen that keeps me pushing the abstinence message. And the first National Drug Recovery Conference is a natural place to do that. Here, though, I'm reminded of what I'm up against trying to change government policy. The attitude of those in power towards addicts is the message one speaker, an unusual political and drug expert, wants to get across.
It does say on that card you've got in front of the programme, it says Lord Mancroft, House of Lords. But in the spirit that we're here today, I'd like to say, hello, I'm Benjamin, I'm an addict. I've been in the House of Lords for 27 years. I've been in recovery for 30. I have met and discussed drug policy with every single Home Secretary. Although the World Health Organization, the National Health Service, and God knows everybody else, tells us that addiction is a disease, in the world of politics it still isn't really a disease. It's a moral decision, which is why it's still a crime. And until we get over that, we won't make the progress we need.
A recent drug survey showed how at odds the government's position is with what normal British people actually do, take or think. 30% of normal British people have taken illegal drugs. That's 15 million people. 3 million are still using them, and 1 million have a drug problem. That's 1 million unnecessary criminals that the government are at war with. So what does Lord Benjamin Mancroft, a former drug addict and posh person, think underpins the government's reluctance to change?
The ultimate weapon of criminalisation in this country is the 1973 Misuse of Drugs Act. But if you look at the papers that are available, public papers, about what the thinking was at that time in the late 60s and early 70s, what they were really saying is, we think we've got this problem with drugs, we don't really understand it, we don't know what to do about it, so the obvious thing to do is to ban it, we'll sit on it. And bearing in mind at that stage of proceedings, there were, I think, between 4,000 and 6,000 registered addicts in the whole of Britain. So it was a tiny problem, and it's just kept going. Since then, no one's had the nerve to make this huge change. The first thing that's stopping it is a generational thing. And that is that people of my parents' generation didn't understand anything about drugs when I was using them. And that applies to politics as well. Margaret Thatcher, John Major, did not come from a drug-taking generation. They had probably never come across a joint in their lives. But now we have a younger generation of politicians, Tony Blair, David Cameron, who
by
have come...
implication may have come across.
Well, if they haven't, then their argument that they're in touch goes out the window.
It does, doesn't it?
Everybody in this
Which
world
is it?
has.
Either you're a drug addict or you're not in touch.
Yeah.
Which one is it, Cameron?
We live in a democracy, and our MPs will do what they think their constituents want. And currently, large numbers of MPs don't think that their constituents want us to legalise drugs. And whereas you might get an MP sitting quietly in a room with the door closed to admit, yeah, I know we really ought to legalise, collectively they won't at the moment, because they perceive that they would lose votes by doing that. When you're in politics, language is hugely important. When we were talking about the issue around criminalisation, you said actually what we're talking about is regulation.
Because I suppose regulation is a bit more of a conservative sounding, oh, I'd like to regulate. Like people aren't going to go, it's not such an edgy word.
If I said to anybody, do you think we should regulate drugs more efficiently? They'd say, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's legalisation. Now, if you were to say to people, actually, we have between 250 and 350,000 very ill people in this country, and they're wandering the streets, and they're so ill that they've been driven to crime, and they're living in the most appalling way. Do you think it's a good idea if we pick them up and put them into nice, clean healthcare facilities, which would make them better so they don't have to commit crimes?
Yeah.
And actually they can go out and get a job and have a family and become constructive members of society Who wouldn't think that's a good idea?
Having found myself temporarily agreeing with a Tory peer, I rushed to the Midlands to relax. I came to Burton-on-Trent because I've heard about the work of recovering alcoholic Noreen Oliver.
So some of the people, Noreen, that we're going to meet here that are working here, a matter of, months ago were junkies and alcoholics.
Yes,
and now they're giving back to the community, they're not draining the community. These are cakes made by drug addicts.
Yeah.
From coke to cake.
Noreen asked me to come today to her treatment centre to see the graduation ceremony of a man called Jamie. Not, it has to be said, an overnight success story. Look at him. As an addict, he had treatment here, but then relapsed and was soon living back on the streets. But Noreen knows the importance of persistence with drug addicts, and now Jamie's completed 18 weeks of rehab.
You know now that the hard work starts now. You've now got to look after your recovery. You know, and that means you've got to attend your aftercare, you've got to attend your meetings, and let everybody know out in this community that you can recover from drug misuse, yeah?
Be a pleasure, thank you, Noel.
Cheers. All right, mate. What I know is, like, at the moment, you are clean from drugs and alcohol today, so you've got it at this moment. What I felt myself when I was using and drinking is that I didn't have a choice. Now that I'm in recovery, I feel like I have got a choice. You've got that now. So what I think is important, Jamie, is to know you don't have to go back now. So I'm glad to be in recovery with you, mate. Nice work. Cheers.
Thanks for coming.
Cheers, man.
Jamie's nephew Stephen has turned up too to welcome his uncle back into the family and provide us with a necessary tear-jerk moment.
You're my best uncle. Obviously, I know everything you've been through. I'm really proud of you. We all are. And to see you sat there today is brilliant. Honestly, I can't wait to have you back.
I got you.
Cheers. Sorry.
Oh, no, cheers for that, Stephen. Wow, flipping out. It's a bit surreal, isn't it? I've got a dog sitting down there, Russell Brandon. But now, on a serious note, you know, me getting through this today is through you lot. You know what I mean? You can't do it on your own. With all us together, we can do anything. I mean that from my heart.
I suppose this is the moment when Noreen's own experience of recovery can really kick in. If addicts just go back to their old world, their old habits are likely to recommence. So she deliberately breaks the cycle.
He's allowed to have his phone back now. There you go.
This has been blanked. You know what I mean? All the old drug dealers are gone. You know what I mean? It's brand new.
So that's the phone you had before, but it's been cleaned up?
Yeah.
You're cleaned up, your phone's cleaned up?
Nothing, mate. I've not even made a call on it yet.
All right, I'm not accusing you.
Right.
The next thing Noreen does is stop recovering addicts returning to their old haunts. She's taken over properties nearby and turned them into flats for them to live in.
Oh, you got your own room and everything?
Oh, yeah, en suite as well.
When you was drinking and using, did you get in a lot of trouble with old Bill and that?
I've never been to prison, but I got 2 years suspended for intent to supply with a Class A drug, which was heroin.
So now, I suppose you're out of that sort of criminal kind of behaviour as well?
Yeah. Well, that's what this place is drummed into me. You know, it's not the drink and the drugs what the problem is. It's
Now it's down to you.
time to take responsibility and grow up.
Entrepreneurial Noreen also creates jobs here. She set up this cafe to give recovering addicts and alcoholics a place to work and vital experience. The result of all this is an astonishing 68% success rate of people completing rehab and not re-presenting, that means coming back again relapsed and all full of drugs and apologies, within a year.
This is the first time clean for me in 20 years.
Wow.
You know, been in and out of jail, just taking, basically.
Yeah.
Not caring about myself, anybody, anything. You know, living on the street. But I've come here because, you know, I want to change, and this place has given me that chance.
So Noreen's facility is pretty impressive, all the more so because she does it without any government funding.
We have a huge waiting list, and when you think other counties just don't do rehab at all, you know, there's 50% of the local authorities have cut their budgets to rehabs. They're diverting all the drugs money and using it for other things, you know, and I appreciate
Why?
there
Because
are.
they can?
Because they can. Jamie, you look fantastic. From the man that came in that was just a wreck, you look absolutely fantastic.
What Noreen does is effective. Think what difference it would make if she had proper government funding, if other communities built around recovering drug addicts could be established. Because drug taking is illegal, there is a stigma around addiction that prevents progress. This is why I think we should decriminalise all drugs, and why in recent months I've put more and more effort into taking my argument into the public arena. But one question is continually asked.
I can't imagine. But don't you think one of the reasons why politicians and why society tends to keep drugs illegal is one of fear that kids, that young people will turn on perhaps needlessly?
I think there is some legitimate fear around drugs. Drugs, I'm not a big, woohoo, let's take drugs type person. Drugs can be incredibly dangerous and negative. What I'm saying is making them illegal isn't working. It doesn't work. It doesn't prevent people from using drugs. I'm talking about...
It didn't prevent you?
No, it made absolutely no difference. I think no difference at all. I think
Except presumably you lived in fear of, at some point, possibly running up against the law.
It complicated the situation and it made it more difficult to approach the situation for what it is legitimately, a disease which requires therapy and compassion.
I'm sure Jon Snow is just being a devil's advocate in his role as a news journalist. But it's always interesting to hear the other side of any argument. So we spoke to Professor Neil McKegney from the Centre of Drug Misuse Research.
The temptation to use drugs, the allure of drugs, is so great. There has to be some sort of sanction. You might say it's hard to make the case for sanctions because we're all humanitarian and we like the idea of providing treatment, and that's socially acceptable, personally acceptable. But if you don't have any barrier to use, then it seems to me you run the real risk of use increasing. But I also think it's really important not just to see drugs from the perspective of the addict. I mean, it's true that you are a very passionate supporter of treatment and recovery, but it's also true, and it may be unfashionable to say it, that society still needs protection from the amount of criminality that's associated with drug use. So whilst prison may not be necessarily the welcome option for a drug user who's offending, it's nevertheless an important part of the protection that society needs to have from those who are actually committing those crimes.
To be, frank, Neil, for me, this is a personal issue. You're personally calling me a criminal for something I help. You're sitting there saying, Russell, I'm a criminal.
But you've accepted that. You have already...
No, I don't accept it.
No, but you have already...
I don't accept it.
No, but you have
I think society's making a massive mistake calling people that are unwell criminals.
You've already accepted that you have broken laws.
No, I don't. It was wrong. It made the situation much worse, Neil.
And I'm not going to be an advocate for the current situation being rip-roaring success.
No.
It is not so bad that you would need to say, well, let's actually do away with criminalisation entirely. There is still a role for the criminal sanction against drug use.
For me, the experiment of prohibition has lasted a century and has done nothing but increase a black market economy, gangster warlords across Mexico, suffering and poverty wherever it's been introduced. And so on a personal level and on a political level, it just isn't working. It's time to try something else.
What I'm saying is that you can look at drug use from the perspective of the drug user, but you also have a moral obligation to look at drug use from the perspective of society. The majority of people are not using these drugs. Now, from the perspective of the drug user, you can say, I don't want all this hassle in my life. I don't want to be criminalised. I don't want the police knocking down my door. And I agree with you. I wouldn't want my door knocked down either. But at the same time, it is important that society has a standard.
And I think the important shift that we need to make as a culture is to end this sort of moral judgment of people that have an illness and treat them compassionately.
But why?
This is
why?
an illness.
I mean, why? What's the problem with a moral judgment?
It's not like criminalisation hasn't been given a fair crack of the whip.
So I hear that. But you know what you're doing there, Russell? You're taking a small sector of society, in numerical terms, the addict population, and you're saying society's entire drug laws should be shaped to meet the needs of that small sector of people who have become addicted. But that doesn't make a lot of sense, because the vast majority of other people are not addicted.
But it's not just the suffering of addicts I see, it's the misery, violence and degradation in communities in Britain and across the world that current drug laws exacerbate. So when invited to speak at a UN conference on drugs in Vienna, I take the opportunity to try and persuade the 193 countries that still criminalise drugs to rethink what they're doing. Mike Trace runs an international committee on drugs policy and has organised for me to meet up with unusual-looking delegates from all over the world.
You look fucking great, you lot. It's like a Star Wars intergalactic confederation. What I most want to understand is where the debate is currently and where it would ideally be in 2 years' time.
There's I think, an interesting dynamic that's playing out at the moment. The death penalty has been a big one this year. A journalist asked the Mr. Fedotov from Russia if something that's now completely legal in Uruguay, i.e. producing and selling cannabis, is 100% legal there, but in Singapore it can get you the death penalty, doesn't suggest consensus. He said, it's a very broad consensus.
It's funny but also appalling that in some countries you face the death penalty for cannabis. Reefer Madness was a persuasive piece of propaganda, but hanging, that's why it's important to see whether these fears are realised when a country does decriminalise drugs. What happens? Does drug use rise? In Portugal we have a case study. Since 2001, drug possession is no longer a criminal offence.
I want to introduce Russell to one of my heroes, João Goulart from Portugal, who introduced the big decriminalisation of Portugal.
Well, pleasure to meet you.
Now we have 11, 12 years of those policies in practice, so we acted as a living laboratory.
What are the most positive and negative surprises?
The most positive is decrease in the number of AIDS infection. That was really dramatic.
AIDS infection dramatically dropped.
Yes. We have a small increase in the average use of illicit substances among general population.
Small increase in recreational use.
Yes, but on crime, there's a decrease in the petty crimes.
Because I suppose the live experiences nullify the conservative arguments to keep things the same. We don't know what would happen, it's dangerous, there will be crimes, these places will become drug havens. In Portugal this hasn't been the case. So this is really good news.
Yeah.
With drug-related deaths down an impressive 75%, their policy of sending addicts to treatment rather than court and prison seems to be working well.
It's now supported by all the politics.
Even the most conservative
yes, even
parties
those who voted
return.
against.
No one would go back?
No.
To hear the other side, I asked Mike to introduce me to someone from a part of the world extensively involved in drug trafficking and production, but where drugs are still illegal.
I'm the chairman of what we call West African Commission on Drug.
I wonder if it would work for the whole planet. The experiment has been tried in Portugal and Switzerland, and the legislation that's been tried in Uruguay.
Well,
what do you think?
I believe that we should keep our eyes on those experiments. Let's call them experiments.
Just call them experiments.
Yeah, let's call them experiments.
They're experiments?
Yes. Now, if those experiments succeed...
How long?
It's too early. Let's give it 5 years.
Not for 5 years. Then
Yes.
after 5 years, we can say this has been a good experiment.
Yeah.
Despite his talk of waiting 5 years, a couple of months later I read that the West African Drug Commission changed policy. It now says the harms of criminalisation far outweigh those of decriminalisation. So all drug use should not be considered a crime, but a matter of public health.
We'll keep in touch.
Thank you. I was surprised that despite asking Mike to approach other delegates, no one else agreed to debate their position with me.
I just wanted to ask you about your opinion on cannabis legalization and if we should take a similar approach to legalize and regulate other drugs.
I completely agree with the legalisation of cannabis, and I think we should legalise and regulate all other drugs. That's what I think should happen globally as quickly as possible. Shouldn't wait for 2 years, just get on, do it now. Global drug laws need to change because thousands of people are dying. There's an illicit economy. People are getting like butchered left and right all over Mexico. People are getting hung in Pakistan and all over Malaysia for something that's not a moral issue. It's not a moral issue. It's a health issue. I think we all agree within ourselves, don't we? We already know the answer. Knowledge is acting on wisdom. I don't know why we're pretending that we don't know what to do. It's like a bizarre facade.
It's peculiar that we would do this as human beings. Why are we? It's confusing, Mike.
Well, it's in Britain, obviously, and patriotically, where I want to see change happen quickly. I asked Mike, who was once Britain's drug czar, which is weird, why he thinks Britain isn't one of the reform countries, given that David Cameron, 10 years ago, thought it should be.
The position, Cameron was pretty vocal and said that the drug war wasn't working, didn't he?
Yeah, he was on a committee 10 years ago that said exactly that, the drug war is not working. And actually he said the UK should go to the United Nations and propose reform. Yeah, which nobody did in those days. So it was quite a good report. Now in government, it's a very difficult issue because the two parties don't agree on it. And so they prefer not to talk about it, which is a shame because the UK is potentially a very progressive country, but we are paralysed at the moment.
Is it because there's no votes in drugs?
I think that's the judgment they're making, is you take a big risk if you are looking as if you want to be into drug reform. So most politicians will say, I don't want to be criticised by the Daily Mail or my opposite opponents.
Like that feels like it's a utilisation of my skill set. And then here's the voiceover. Charged by my experiences at the UN, I went back to confront Cameron, knowing that I had the mandate of most of the people in Europe. Like,
Obviously, I'm interested to know why David Cameron has changed his views, so we requested an interview. Meanwhile, I want to see how the current criminal justice system has affected Samantha. After I left her in the police cell, she was taken to court and got a 6-week prison sentence. After serving just 3 weeks, Samantha was released with nowhere to go. Extraordinarily, she broke into the house that she was originally arrested in. Turfed out of there, she started living on the streets again, and I think it's a fair bet, began taking drugs.
I was going to throw you off your bike. Oh, I was going to grab you and fling you off a bit.
I don't think you'd be able to
I think I would have done.
You all right?
Yeah, great. Absolutely brilliant.
In prison, Samantha became close with Kelly, who's also a drug addict, and she insisted that Kelly participate in our interview.
I've smoked a little bit, yeah, I have, yeah. But that's just got nowhere to live.
Remember when we spoke in that cell? You said that you wanted to get clean. Can you really, do you want to get clean?
Yeah, but I can't look where I'm living. I'm all over the place, you know? I don't know where I'm staying one night from the next.
Since you've been in prison, your life's exactly the same. You're using about the same amount.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you, I've been doing a bag a day. I've been doing about 2 white and 1 bag a day.
So the prison system doesn't really make any difference to your using?
None at all. When you arrested me, I was on the methadone.
Hold on a second. Can we fucking rephrase that? I didn't arrest you. I'm not Batman. When I chatted to you on the phone and you're like, you know, chaotic and mad.
Yeah. No.
No, I can't understand him. He's off his fucking head. I was like, I don't what? Wait, kill. Russell Brand's on the kill. Wait a second. I want you to...
Shut up.
What was good is like before when I arrested you, like there was time to sort of prepare it, so you could be all kind of I just want to get clean and and be all sort of.
I do.
I'm not sure you do, but like the fact is, imagine you're a person watching this documentary. You're a person who's never taken drugs in your life. You wouldn't know the first thing about where to score
All
crack.
you're seeing is a girl that's come out of prison and wants to be clean and ain't got no help.
You're not seeing that. You're seeing someone who ain't taking it seriously. You're seeing someone who's like I suppose, Kelly, what it is. You know, if you think about the sort of the nature of your using...
Yeah, since I was 14, I had bad company. I just had a baby a year and a half ago.
Where's your baby now?
He's gone into care.
Where?
I don't know. As soon as you give birth, they take the baby straight away because the baby's going to be clucking.
Oh, because you're using while you're pregnant. I didn't think about that.
So what you do is you get to touch him for the first time, skin to skin. Then straight away they take him and go and assess him. So it takes 2 weeks for them to assess him because they need to see for a whole week how his cluck's going to be. And by the end of that 7 days, they can tell you whether he needs oral morphine or not, by his high-pitched screams, by the way he shudders.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, I hated myself.
That's hardcore, mate.
Yeah, it's hardcore.
just want some help. I just want to be me again.
Oh, baby.
I don't want to be like this. I can't. I just want some help. I just want to be human again. I feel like a fucking alien out there. I'm a painter and decorator. I want a job. I want to, you know, go to work every morning and think, yeah, I've done that. You know what I mean? Not sit there and drink and sit in a fucking subway smoking this shit and that shit. I want to show the world that Kenny can be Kenny again. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I just need a bit of help, and there's no help out there.
Why can't you do it as well, Sam? You've got to do it.
You ready to?
Yeah, I can, yeah. But if you want to do your own thing, I'll do your own thing.
I'm not saying do my own thing, Sam. I'll always be there with you. I'll always phone you and make sure you're all right. I don't think you're ready, I don't. I'd love you to be ready, though.
Samantha, she gets nicked, she goes to prison, she comes out, she uses drugs, she gets nicked, goes to prison. So it's not like people think that the sort of a compassionate and altruistic perspective is some sort of wet, woolly liberalism. It's not. It's pragmatism. It doesn't work.
It's gonna have to be a different man.
And now for the climactic moment that we're all awaiting, where I confront current Prime Minister David Cameron and ask him why he says the current system is working. Obviously he didn't agree to that meeting, so instead I meet the Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg. He's criticised the government drug policy, which is a start, but what has he done to really move it on?
Describing it in military terms, war on drugs, chucking lots of people into prison only to see them come out hooked on even harder drugs, clearly doesn't make sense. You should be treating people who are addicted as people who need help and treatment. As it happens in this particular government, I can't get my particular coalition partners now to agree to further reform. But you're right, it has to change because you quite rightly say warehousing people behind bars and simply just ejecting them into normal life and somehow expecting them to find their feet again it's sort of patently absurd.
We have an obligation, we have a duty to bring about change, and sometimes also to lead.
The public have moved much further on this than the political class have. I'll give you a very good example. The Sun newspaper. 5-10 years ago, the Sun newspaper would never write the kind of things they write now. It's fantastic. I think the best-selling newspaper in the United Kingdom is actually now one of the leading advocates of drugs reform. That's a big change.
It's just the pace of it. That's what makes me sort of somewhat despondent about the political system, and I don't suppose there's probably anyone in this country who's more despondent about the political system than you. But, like, what I personally feel is it all takes so long.
I think we'll look back at it 50 years' time and think, what?
How come we're, like, prepared to sit out a 50-year lump of bird on it when we could just go, right, let's make moves now? You'd like it to go quicker.
Of course I'd like it to go much quicker.
The system's broke.
Look, it's slow.
It's going to happen. I'm just saying, do you want to do it while you've got jobs, or do you want us to take care of it?
I'm not as pessimistic as you are about the capacity to change.
Nick. I'm not pessimistic. And I hate people that say this.
Impatient.
I'm practical. It's just like sort of once I know a thing now. I know a thing. So once I know it, I don't like all this meandering and nonsense. Right, why are we kowtowing to and pretending we don't know something?
Can I tell you why? You might know something. It might just take other people a little bit longer to know things. And in a democracy, you need to persuade other people.
Don't pull the democracy move on me.
I can guarantee you, I can have people sitting in the seat from completely different places. So, it's a bit too risky.
Yeah, but they're not drug addicts. They've not been through it. They're talking from a position.
They're still members of society. That's the point. That's the point. You know, you can't. You and I might disagree with what they might say, but you can't somehow sort of dismiss their responses.
But I think you and I both know that the reason that this legislation takes so long to move is because there's certain people who benefit from things being how they are, that a society structured as it is beneficial to the people that are at the top of it. And the people that say...
I totally agree with you. There is a ridiculous, outdated, deeply sort of shrivelled, unheroic cowardice in the British political class,
yes,
where people will talk bravely about reforming drugs when they're not in office, and the moment they get in offices
Yeah,
like this,
Bill Clinton.
they completely shut up. It's coming. Change is coming. It is happening in what you would call baby steps, and it will continue. There is just no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the idiotic sort of so-called war on drugs that we have today will simply not persist. It will not.
That's just not enough, Nick. It's just not enough. I mean, I bet if we ran some tests in the toilets over there in Westminster, I think we'd find out that there's some interesting powders. You know, so like, you know, if these people are prepared to use drugs themselves, if they're prepared, you know, they're not subject to the conditions, to the rules, to the penalties that we're subject to. And so for us, it is an emergency. It's not an emergency. Some people have got 50 years. Some people are struggling to get through the next few seconds, mate. And that's who we've got to speak on behalf of.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I like you. I know you.
So Nick agrees the war on drugs is the wrong policy, but he can't do anything about it. Then just 4 weeks later comes this possible game changer.
Tonight at 10, a new debate about decriminalising drugs prompted by a Home Office report. There's no evidence that tough sentencing affects the levels of illegal drug use. That's the main conclusion of a study which draws comparisons with other countries where certain drugs have been decriminalised and drug abuse is reported to have fallen.
In this case, David Cameron's response was immediate.
The evidence is what we're doing is working. I don't believe in decriminalising drugs that are illegal today. I'm a parent with 3 children. I don't want to send out a message that somehow taking these drugs is okay or safe, because in many cases it simply isn't.
The same report reveals that 71% of the British population know that the war on drugs can never be won. So what do we do?
The disease of addiction is no respecter of class or race or anything. It affects all of us. But like at the arse end of it is poor people going to prison, people with mental health issues, and just the people messed up, having to get into the sex industry, having to get into crime to support their habits. Just like, this is bollocks, let's sort this shit out. You know, the Sabbath is for the man is not for the Sabbath. So, you know, like these systems are for us. If those systems don't serve us, we get rid of the system.